In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace your rear brake caliper on this Toyota Camry. If you need this or any other parts for your car, check us out at oneauto.com. Let's get started. Because this vehicle has a locking lug nut on the wheels, I'm going to break that free first by hand. That's this one right here. I do not recommend putting an impact of any kind on those locking lug nut keys. Having said that, I'm going to get the key, which should be with the vehicle, spin it until it lines up, press it on, use a 21mm socket and a long breaker bar to get some leverage. There we go, that broke free. Now I can leave it like this. You can use an impact to drive it out the rest of the way. You just don't want to break it free with one because the impacts from the impact can damage the splines on this little key. Now use a 21mm socket and your tool of choice to remove the rest of the lug nuts. With those off, remove the wheel. From the back side of the caliper, let's crack free the banjo bolt to make sure that it's easily removable once the caliper is off. Use a 14mm socket or wrench, break it free, and then I'm going to snug it back up so that it doesn't leak fluid, but it will be broken free and easier to remove when the time comes. Next, I'm going to remove the two bracket bolts. These are what bolt the caliper onto the slider pins with a 14mm socket or wrench. You can do this as well. Break these free. If when you do this, the slider pin starts spinning, you could just hold onto it with a 14mm wrench or some pliers. Take that out. Do the same to this one. Now you could remove the entire caliper and bracket assembly, but it makes it a little bit more difficult to reach the caliper bracket bolts on the backside here with this on. So that's why I prefer to do it this way. Plus it makes this easier to remove the pads. Pull this off, push the pads out. Sometimes they're a little bit stuck in here, so you'll need a small pry bar to persuade them. There's one. And two. Now, let's remove these two 17mm bolts that hold the caliper bracket onto the knuckle. Break them free. All right. Remove these the rest of the way. And remove your bracket. Now on the new caliper, we have to prepare it for installation. I have separated it so that I have the bracket here and the caliper over here. I'm going to use some silicone paste and just apply a very thin layer to the bracket where the anti-rattle clips sit. This is to prevent rust from building up. I'm using high temperature brake rated silicone paste. If you don't have this, you can use some brake grease or whatever else you have, but you just want to make sure that it is rated for high temperature so that as you drive and the brakes heat up, this doesn't melt away and basically liquefy onto your brakes. That would not be a good thing. Now you want to take the anti-rattle clips and slide them on. Make sure they click and secure and lock in place right in here in the middle. Also, you want to make sure you don't put too much silicone paste or brake grease, whatever you're using, because if you do, it'll actually squeeze into the center when you put the pads and the anti-rattle clips on and everything gets crushed down, and then it'll get on your rotor, and that would be a bad thing. Now I'm going to pull out these slider pins. I'm going to add a little bit of that brake-rated silicone paste right in here. This is going to act as a reserve of grease once it gets into the boot. And of course, I'm also going to lightly coat the slider pin so that I have grease all over this area. Work it into the boot, get that slider pin down in there, press it in, squeeze the boot as you squeeze the slider to get any air out of there. And now we'll do the same to the other one over here. I like to do these one at a time so that I don't confuse the two, because a lot of times one will have an extra boot on the end, whereas the other one will not. Add some silicone paste, smear this on the slider pin. Now, of course, there is already some grease in here, but I like to add my own amount of grease to make sure that it is properly lubricated for a long time. Wipe off anything that has squeezed out. Let's get the air out of this one and get the air out of this one. And now this bracket is ready to be put back on the vehicle, so let's do that. Get the caliper bracket over the rotor, line it up with the two mounting holes, and once it does line up, slide the bolts through. The torque for these two is 58 foot-pounds. All right. On the pads, when I took them out, the wear indicator was sitting on the bottom, so I'm going to put it back the same way that it came out. This might be a little bit challenging, just so you know, you have to kind of overcome the force of all these springs trying to push the pads apart. And then take your caliper, put that over, and then get the new bolts that go into the slider pins, thread these in all the way. The torque for these is 20 foot-pounds. My slider is spinning, so I'm going to hold it with some pliers very gently. Careful not to damage the boot by doing this. That's torqued. 20 foot-pounds is not a whole lot. Now let's remove the banjo bolt from the old caliper. It should be easy to remove since it's already broken free. Keep in mind, have a collection bucket ready because at this point brake fluid will leak out. Take this off, let that caliper drain. Make sure both of the crush washers, those copper crush washers, came off of the hose. And let's remove the banjo bolt off of the new caliper. It should come with 2 brand new crush washers, but you're going to want to take one of them off, keep one on, put the banjo bolt through, put the other crush washer on the other side, sandwich the hose in between the 2 crush washers, thread this in, and you're going to want to make sure that the hose actually fits into its slot like that because it is designed to hook in. And now just snug it up. This new banjo bolt is an 11 millimeter. The torque for this banjo bolt is 25 foot-pounds. What you're looking to do is crush those 2 copper washers so that you can create a nice tight seal. Remove the bleeder screw cap, use an 8 millimeter wrench, break the bleeder screw free, and let gravity pull fluid down into the caliper and push all the air out. This is called a gravity bleed. Once the gravity bleed is done, we're going to want to perform a full manual brake bleed. To begin your manual brake bleed, make sure that your brake master cylinder is topped off with clean fluid. Then you're going to want to have a second person in the car pumping up the brake pedal as you open and close the bleeder screw. So after a few pumps, have them hold pressure on the brake pedal and open up the bleeder screw. At this point, air and fluid will come out. Once the pedal has reached the floor, close off the bleeder screw and have them pump up the brakes again. After 2 to 3 pumps, have them hold pressure on the brake pedal once again and open up the bleeder screw. Repeat this procedure until no more air comes out of the caliper and you have only clean fluid. Once you get to that point, close off the bleeder screw and top off the master cylinder with clean fluid to make sure it's full. Wipe off any drippage, cap it off, and let's put the wheel on. Start on all 5 of your lug nuts, bottom them out, and torque them to 76 foot-pounds. Once again, 76 foot-pounds in a cross pattern. There you go. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope it was helpful. If you have anything to say, leave it in the comments section below. And as always, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell so you can stay up to date with all of our latest content. Thanks for watching.